evening, Linda. What do you think of the Bob Lazar documentary recently released? Any thoughts?
Well, may I answer from my own personal face-to-face with Bob Lazar, starting in 1988, when John Lear, Bob Lazar, George Knapp, myself, and some other people would periodically cross paths in Las Vegas or someplace. And I got to know and like those guys. And it was 1990. I was working at CNN. I was working on an environment, like a show about the environment. It was called, we called it Earth, it was Earth Alert or something. And I was a producer, and I got a call in Atlanta at CNN at my office from Bob Lazar. And he said, we're going to be doing something on Memorial Day here. If you can get here, we'd like to have you come and be part of the festivities. And we can talk about, by then it had been very controversial, about whether or not Bob Lazar with John Lear, had Bob Lazar been telling the truth about going to Area 51, working for EG&G, all of that. So I went to Las Vegas, met with all of those guys, and was able to spend a lot of time on that Memorial Day weekend, and I believe it was 1990. And here is the moment of talking with Bob Lazar that is indelible in my mind. He was showing me in his kitchen how he ran this film for the real estate offices that he worked for, filming houses. And he was in the process of demonstrating how he was doing that, just to show me that this is what he did. And he had told me that when Stanton Friedman had questioned him about the fact that he had no degree from MIT, he said, I never ever said I had a degree from MIT or anything like that. What happened, Linda, is I'm an adopted child, and my parents lived in Florida, and they didn't make much money. And I had gone to school with some buddies. We liked electrical things. We liked engineering. We liked taking cars apart. And some of my buddies got accepted to MIT. He said, I drove up to see them as my friends. And I went to one of their classes for a few days. He would just go and sit. And he said, and I learned some things. I became even more interested in having some kind of a career in which I would be dealing with electronic and engineering things. And he said, that's what I learned at MIT. I never told anybody I had a degree. That's Bob's firsthand version to me. And he started talking about, I did meet Edward Teller. And I did ask Edward Teller if there was any way I could get work out in a capacity where there were UFOs, and that we just had a discussion about it, quite frankly. And he said, that's how I ended up getting this assignment through EG&G and going to Area 51 and going down underneath. He said they had the craft that he went to, it was propped up somehow so that you couldn't just walk around. They kept everybody very, very compartmentalized. And that Lazar was able to get down underneath a craft. And he said there were other engineers inside this craft, and they were doing various things. And that he said that's when I am introduced to this concept of an element 115 and neutralizing gravity and all of this stuff. And back at that point, when there was so much evolving, beginning controversy about whether Bob Lazar was telling the truth, and counterintelligence would not want anybody to believe that Bob Lazar was telling the truth, and therefore there would be all efforts by the government to discredit him, and that's why he thinks that prostitution, that he was doing accounting for a house of prostitution. He thinks that's why that charge came up. When the county where the house of prostitution was supposed to be, prostitution was supposed to be legal. So he felt that everything was trumped up and trying to hurt him, and that's one of the reasons why eventually he left Nevada and went into a very off-the-grid, not being involved, except for later on, recently, with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and doing that documentary. And the part that I remember hearing him talk to me with emotion was when he said, "Linda, I know that I went to the McCarran airport, and I know that I was shown these books." And he described to me one that was about another civilization that was not human. And he described some of the things that he remembered and said, "But I still can see, I think I'm in the McCarran airport. I think I'm waiting for a plane." And he said, "And it seems to me that there's books in front of me, but somebody in a lab coat comes in and they do something with a needle into my arm, and they tell me to drink something that was green colored, and it smelled to me like pine sol. And then I don't know what happened." And it was Bob Lazar trying to say that he honestly was confused himself about what John Burroughs, Peniston, maybe Levine, others. Where does conscious, alert memory stop and start, and manipulated blank spots, amnesia, overlays, experiences like putting movies in people's heads that they didn't really live, but they are put in so that it will block out something else? And that's why this is so complicated again. It's why it is a 16-layer chess game. And you can't tell the players without technology. Because none of us know what exactly has happened to Bob Lazar's mind from outside forces, or to John Burroughs, to all these others. And that, from my point of view, Bob Lazar was always trying to tell the truth. I found him to be a person that you would put into that category of somebody who would be almost cranky or irritated, and that he would tell you the truth. Sarcastic, he would tell you the truth. That to me is the Bob Lazar that I knew.